Welcome to the Data Myths 2019 podcast, and I'm your host, Brian Gagnon. Today we're going to talk about the best of CES 2019. There was a ton of things to see and talk about, and we'll try to cover those all today in this episode. But to give you the high level, everything was autonomous, everything had AI, everything was an Internet of Things, and more importantly, every pet had a sensor. And also, if that wasn't all cool enough, there were more drones and robots than you could possibly shake a stick at. So watch out, Jetsons. Let's cover some of the cool tech. Hey everyone, so I have Malinda Gagnon, actually my better half, with me here today for the first podcast in the datamyth.com series.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me, Brian.
Hey, no problem. So I figure since this is a first, why don't we take a few minutes and introduce ourselves, since we'll be doing this on a much more regular basis. So Malinda, why don't you give a little quick rundown on some of the places that you've been and some of the things that you've done really quickly, and then we'll move on.
Really quickly. Okay. So I guess the quick version is that I've worked in digital communications of some form for many years, almost 20 years. So highlights was at Google in the early glory days when we were in startup space in Cambridge, and worked with advertising agencies as my customers, and then went to Group M. So for those of you not in the media space, the world's largest media investment company, and ran a consulting group, and then ran a product group. So know media and advertising really well, and have a background in international communications, and I'm interested in those things as well. So
nice. That should be a good counterpoint to some of the stuff that we talk about. So my background is a little different than Malinda's. I know pretty much nothing about marketing, actually. Well, that's not entirely true, but I've been focused on the technical side of things. I've built a few consulting firms, worked at a number of tech companies, mainly VMware, was early at VMware, and spent a lot of time there, as well as Western Digital as their head of engineering. So that's my background. That's our background. But let's dig in. So we just spent a whole entire week at Las Vegas, which that in itself is like a Las Vegas year. And we saw lots of great stuff at CES 2019. So what would you say, what was your favorite standout thing that you saw?
the favorite thing that I saw was a way to track a ski run, actually. And, people might say, oh, that's pretty specific and maybe a little off the wall. But in terms of overall tech trends, we're seeing an advancement in similar technologies. TV technology is continuing to move forward. 8K is now out there. We have TVs that roll up and down. We have flexible phones. The materials, the resolution is pretty impressive. There's more and more to do with automation, of course, drones, IoT. So if you think about, what's a real differentiator to make something new stand out, it's how these things are applied. And there's nothing that's been done before to apply this cool new technology to skiing. And personally, I'm a huge fan of skiing. I absolutely love to do it myself and was a ski racer at one point. So that was a new and different thing to see.
Nice. So not your typical Internet of Things application. Since we do live in a ski town, and oh, by the way, we are actually married. So that's a fun fact. But yeah, we do live in a ski town. So makes sense that technology would migrate to our household somehow. So what is the company? Give us a little bit about it and some of the stuff that they're doing.
Yeah, they're called Snow Cookie. It's snowcookiesports.com. And they're out of Switzerland. We found them actually in a pitch contest that Techstars was running, and they are just super smart founders. First of all, the founder who we spent most of our time talking with, Martin, he's a PhD in neuroscience, and but there's no lack of smart people at CES for sure, but he's definitely up there. So basically, what the technology does has 3 sensors. So one on each ski, one in the center of your chest, and it tracks literally everything about your run. So pitch, yaw, roll, acceleration. You can break it down run by run to see your body positioning, weight on each ski, angulation of your body. So this will be really cool for a recreational skier to use who wants to understand more about what they can work on and improve and have more fun with the sport, because skiing is a lot more fun when you know how to do it really well. And it's also going to be really interesting to get this into the hands of athletes. So we're looking forward to introducing this to some ski race teams and also into some ski schools.
Nice. And I know a few years ago when we were at South by Southwest, we were just starting to see Internet of Things helmets and such for football and some of the contact sports come out. Do you think this is just the next natural extension with like telemetry for skiing and other sports?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the general consumer is becoming more comfortable with analytics. It's still the challenge to the developer to make sure that information is presented in a friendly and clear fashion. But overall, it's as if analytics are providing us with some gamification today. So that's a big shift, because, I mean, let's face it, you can have all the diagnostics in the world, and if people aren't ready or they don't care, it's not going to do anything.
So you're talking about all of the AI that we saw that was just a sensor, some answer that it gave us that something was good or something was bad.
Yeah.
But no real valuable actual AI.
Well, it's like think of it this way. Okay, my dog's wearing a collar. I can tell, how fast its heart's beating, its respiration rate, and so forth. So, right, like, okay, give me an alert if it's starting to go really high, but
I don't know. Are you a vet? I'm not.
I'm not. I don't know what to do with that information. I saw some really crazy charts with a lot of this, particularly in the pet health space. So unless I've got this on a feed to my vet, right, I don't know what to do with it. So I think the information's there. That's not the challenge anymore. Pretty charts are not the challenge. It's actually making it meaningful in a way that is quickly understood. People are not going to spend time sifting through data. People in their everyday lives are not data analysts,
Nice. So do you think that as more data becomes available, a lot of the space, in my opinion, is that it's going to start to collapse in a way, because we saw no less than probably 30 or 40 pet tech companies, and many of them did very similar things. Do you think this stuff's going to start to consolidate at some point soon?
Yeah, I think it will have to, because the market will dictate it that way. I mean, these companies to sell product to survive. So yeah, absolutely, we're going to see that. And, it comes down to the age-old thing that, started before all this crazy technology came about, of just, solve a problem for the consumer. Just because you can develop something, well, that's great, but it still has to have some kind of either utility or entertainment value. So what is that,
So interesting. I want to shift gears for a minute, because on the whole AI topic, which will probably be, woven through everything we talk about on this podcast, we were at the Techstars, what was that? Techstars pitch competition. And someone actually said before it kicked off, basically, if you don't have PhDs in your company, if it's an AI company, you're not a real company. And if you're at a marketing company and you use AI, you're definitely not a real company.
I actually used the word ludicrous to say that for a media company.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? I have some pretty strong thoughts on that, and we have actually a pretty good cut of me debating him a little bit. And
which we'll play, right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. We'll stitch that in later.
So the bar to have AI in something right now is really low. So by virtue of that, you can rightfully say you have AI, right? That's not a misnomer. It's not untrue to say that.
You know what I just realized? I'm powered by AI. I have an AI in my name, so therefore.
So do I. Wow.
Oh, goodness. Wow. Yeah. Look at that.
I have 2 A's, so I don't know what that does for me.
It gets you your
doubly artificial.
Doubly artificial.
Awesome.
Nice. That cancels out.
Oh, perfect. Okay, let's go with that.
So I just found it really interesting that he felt so strongly that if you didn't have a PhD or a number of PhDs, that was an equation to how successful your AI company might be. I'm really having a hard time getting my head around that, because that seems like the wedding photographer, for instance, that gets mad at the person that's taking good photos with an iPhone and saying that that's actually not a real photographer.
Yeah, I think it's a case of old guard meets new guard. You know, it's the kid who went to school for, 15 years and hasn't had a date and has given everything to their craft, and that's wonderful. I love these people. I want to work with them. But don't knock the person who, learned it on the fly and can make something really interesting work. And the thing is, we need all types, and they've got to work together. And that's when the really interesting things happen. It's called thought diversity. And we talk about diversity a lot, and we should talk about diversity a lot. There's lots of types of diversity, and educational background is part of it. And there are lots of different ways of doing and thinking. And to have an elitist view is not going to serve anybody. It just props up the old guard and the big degrees. And while that's important to have a PhD in some aspects, it's not the end all be all. And to expand on it too, I think, I'll be excited to play that clip of the question you asked. I think there was some clarity brought to the perspective, and the way he went on to explain it is the difference between an AI consumer and an AI supplier. And when you think of it that way, it does bring a little bit of different light to it, meaning an AI consumer, you can still say you use AI in your product. You didn't invent it all. You didn't write it all. An AI supplier needs to have a much deeper understanding of what goes into it. And I do fully agree with the point that you have to know what it does. You have to know why it's coming to the conclusions or making the decisions that it's making.
Yeah,
that's really important. And if you need a PhD to do that, well, then you got to have your PhD. But the argument is you don't always need it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you 100% on that. And one of the pieces to that, right, is if we're going to grow the industry, and obviously just about everything that we saw at CES had either AI, machine learning, deep learning, some new type of learning that we haven't even seen before, to take a line from old school. I think we're at a very interesting place, right? Where the noise bar for things like AI, blockchain, Internet of Things, etc., it's no longer, just cool. That's kind of like, now with 20% more awesome included, right? And everybody's saying that they have that.
It's like putting, people used to put digital in front of everything. Well, everything's digital. Okay. Like everything has AI. Okay.
Okay.
Moving on.
Yeah, I like that. So what were some of the other things that you saw? I know we saw autonomous everything, autonomous cars, autonomous robots, autonomous drones. What was one of your favorite things? Did you see an autonomous vehicle that just blew your mind?
No, not yet. I think it's got a lot of way to go before it's actually useful, meaning welcomed in society and something that we can actually use. And I know, that there are stats out there. It's crystal clear that, autonomous vehicles still make better decisions more often than a human does. However, if the society isn't ready for it, it's not going to be adopted. So, that's a PR issue that we need to solve.
Is that kind of like going to, now we have cell phones, right? And we're coming up on 5G. Is that like going to the mountain resort and expecting the most wonderful Wi-Fi, and that we're kind of become so out of touch because we get a flavor of being connected everywhere, and then we go to some place that may not be as well connected, whether it be in an airplane or whether it be at some mountain resort? Do you sort of draw a parallel where we as consumers, we get a little taste of something and then we just expect it to be perfect the next time we see it? Is AI and autonomous driving sort of at that place where we just expect it to be perfect?
No, I think it's that we still trust ourselves more than we trust a machine. And that may be a healthy thing. But that's, I think, the rub.
Okay.
You can see a statistic and say, oh, humans cause accidents far more often than any autonomous vehicle has caused an accident. But when that autonomous vehicle has an accident, we remember it a lot more, and it has more impact on us.
And why? It's just because it's new, do you think?
It's emotional. There was not a human driving that thing. Yeah. It doesn't make logical sense.
It kind of smacks of, if you read a lot of the old newspaper clips of when AC and DC power were just starting to come out in New York City and Pittsburgh and Niagara and Buffalo. You'd see the ads where they literally were going at each other about, oh my goodness, AC power is so dangerous, even to the point where the electric chair was put together by one of the competitors to basically show that, look, AC power actually kills you because we use it for the death penalty. Are we at that point with things like some of these technologies where we're just being naysayers?
Yeah, I think we'll always be naysayers. And it's because it's the age-old practice. Like you said, with electricity, it happened then. It happened with automobiles. People are dragged into the future, There are very few of us that are actually excited for some of these changes. And whether that's a good thing or not, I think it is a good thing to be aware of how it's changing our culture and changing how we relate to one another. Those are really good things to think about.
Nice. So let's go back to CES for a second. So what did you see that was an absolute disruptor? Did you see anything at CES that was a disruptor this year? I know this is sort of like cyclic, right? And a few years ago, drones were pretty cool, but those seem to be flying pretty well and flying in pairs and teams now, which is I mean, that's amazing. That looked awesome over the Bellagio fountain. But did you see anything that was just an absolute disruptor?
In terms of how technology is applied, I don't know if I'd call this a real disruptor, but more of a signal of how technology is entering our lives. There were a lot of what I would call companion tech at CES. And what I mean by that is a robot that sole purpose is to provide companionship, to provide entertainment. And I would even say the entertainment factor is pretty light. It's literally like a robot that acts like your dog. It will come over to you. It will show emotion. It reacts to the way you treat it. So it's not like it's showing you this fantastic, music video on demand or this immersive media experience, which is very entertaining. I mean, it's like basic stuff.
But we've had e-pets for quite a while. I mean, e-pets have been out for 10 years, haven't they?
I mean, kids' toys that aren't as advanced. They're trying to replicate emotion. And that's what's so interesting. There were multiple robots that are doing this, and to me, it's pretty fascinating. Is it to the point that just people can't get a dog or a cat? Are we that busy? Are we that urban? Are we, whatever it may be, that we have this lacking thing that we can't fill with a human thing? Is it lack of human companionship? Is it that we just want something easy? Is this scratching that convenience itch in the category of companionship, when we've seen it in commerce and information, this need to be more convenient. So I'm scratching my head about this and wondering what this means overall. So I found that pretty interesting.
So I did see quite a bit of tech that was emotion, or being able to either detect emotions or track emotions or share emotions with marketers. Where do you think that's going? Do you think it's accurate? Do you think, how are we going to monetize that? Because that seems to be where everything goes, right? Which is monetization.
Sure. So I've seen some pretty impressive technology that can monitor sentiment. So that's getting really intelligent, and I think it is really useful. So now I guess I should unpack the useful comment. It's accurate. How is it useful? So I come from the media world. Incredibly useful for a marketer to look at your emotions when you're watching a movie trailer or an app intro video or whatever it may be. That's really solid gold.
I don't want them to see me cry, though.
Oh, everyone wants to see you cry.
There's a few out there that probably want to see me cry.
But that's what people want. Like people, it's fascinating how curious people are about everyday stuff. But this is probably a whole nother topic for conversation.
Well, let's we'll put a pin in that, and we'll come back to that, right?
So yeah, I think it's that the better we can do that, and in a way that doesn't invade people's privacy and make people uncomfortable, it's useful information. Absolutely. For how well you're entertaining or doing whatever the goal is for that end consumer.
So let's shift gears again. So there are a lot of really, big announcements. There's two more big topics I want to cover, and one I know is near and dear to your heart. So talk to me a little bit about the company that got the award removed, and then some of the other crap that we saw at CES. I was actually pretty shocked that they, gave an award to an adult toy company, we shall say, and then turned around and took it away. I didn't think that it was, it wasn't Babes in Toyland or something. It wasn't crazy and in your face. What are your thoughts? Like, I know that evoked a lot of emotion, not just for you, but for many all across the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, there's a company called Laura DiCarlo, and they made a sex toy, woman's sex toy, and they entered it to have a booth at CES. And basically, they also created it in a way that is highly advanced. They basically
does it have emotions?
it elicits emotions.
Oh, nice.
It's so
I'm gonna cry.
So it was in the robotics category originally, and it actually won a innovation award. And I mean, this is legit technology. It was developed in collaboration with Oregon State University's robotics department. And basically, once the award was given, the Consumer Technology Association, which runs CES, said the device was actually immoral and profane. And, actually, it doesn't fit into the robotics category. It doesn't have a category. And took away the award and banned them from CES. So this caused quite a stir for a number of reasons. This is a woman-run company. It's a woman's sexual product. And it caused this big debate about, like, why is women's sexuality a taboo subject when, male sexuality is not such a taboo subject. There are, scantily clad women dancing around the Lamborghini
Massage
booth,
chair. Yeah,
for example. That's overtly sexual. What's wrong with having a device, no scantily clad anyone, in a booth talking about its technology?
Well, and let's be honest, right? The people at the massage chair dancing around were pretty risque, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been to many trade shows in a predominantly male profession, and I've seen quite a few things. And my general rule of thumb is, if you're showing skin in your booth, in your, probably $200,000 to $300,000 booth at one of these things, I am already skeptical that your product is any good. You might as well just get a drone and have it fly overhead with a, $10 off your next order, and fly it around your booth, because it's got the same kitschy effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And CES made a point to say, we're working on banning booth babes and all this. Well, I mean, they weren't banned everywhere. I have a good video of them on my Twitter feed if anyone wants to see it. It's at Malinda_G.
They were artists.
I thought their dresses were cute, but in the context of this, it's just ridiculous. And let me tell you a little bit about what this technology does, because like I said, it's legit. So it basically has the ability to respond to the woman's body, and it imitates, again, not to be immoral or profane here, but multiple sensory points. So mouth, hands, and multiple spots in the woman's anatomy. So basically, this is like the most advanced device, right?
Does it call the next day? Does it cuddle?
This is part of the companionship tech. Hell no, it doesn't cuddle. It doesn't need that. You turn it off when you don't want to love it anymore.
But it ain't gonna cook like I cook.
But but this is, it's to talk, robotics termed as a hands-free biomimetic robotic device. Okay, well, let's just talk about it like that, right? and not get so
Well, and hey, I mean,
sensitive.
if it's hands free, that means that you can use it in the state of New York while driving. Probably not a good idea.
Well, and to, unpack this issue a little bit more too, to say it doesn't have a category, maybe if it's not in the robotics category, it could be in the health category, because there have been studies that have talked about the fact that pleasure is actually part of sexual health. So, there are lots of things to debate about this, but it's the overall just question of why are we so, I will use the word, why are we so touchy about this subject?
Well, I mean, I was kind of wondering if they were going to come out with like an S&M version with blockchain.
Next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
I want to put that on the docket.
Yeah.
So, great debate, and we could probably talk a lot more about this. It definitely was a hot button topic. But the last topic I want to cover is the fact that Alexa, apparently she was grounded and she stayed home. She was nowhere to be seen at CES because Hey Google was everywhere.
Hey Google stole the show. Absolutely. And what I'm most impressed about with Hey Google is their marketing department, honestly, because they took the whole thing by storm. I mean, the whole side of the Las Vegas Convention Center was a banner. I mean,
what do you think they spent on that?
Oh God,
$1 million
it's
bucks?
hard to venture a guess, because not only did they have Las Vegas covered, but partners all were branded. So they worked with, to say hundreds is an understatement, companies to promote and market. And they also had just an army of Hey Google people and these white snowsuit things with little white hats with pom-poms that were all over the place.
I mean, it wasn't that warm last week in Vegas. So, I mean, I actually appreciated the outfits, right?
I wanted to borrow one.
Well, I mean, you could have tried to trade a pin or something and get a hat, but it was amazing. It was amazing to see that there were literally 200 or 300 people with Hey Google outfits on, and they were everywhere. I mean, Alexa may have been there. I don't know. Maybe she cut her hair or something and we didn't recognize her. She was nowhere.
Hey Google got asked to the prom and Alexa stayed home.
Aw.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sad story.
It is.
Maybe she's got the I don't know. Maybe she's got a new AI
Alexa
friend.
stayed home with Laura DiCarlo.
Maybe
Maybe
that'd be a good story.
we may have something here. I think we just figured something out.
Oh boy. I'm gonna have to edit this a little bit, but so let's wrap it up. We saw a lot of cool stuff. We didn't really see anything that I would put in the full disruptor category.
My big thing about CES, the word is more. More connectivity, more resolution, more use cases. To say disruptor, that's like whole new category, whole new way of thinking about things. I didn't see that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to put it. More.
It was still cool, but it was just more.
Yeah. There's one last thing, or maybe even a couple, right? Things I'd love to talk about. So that's all convention center. We've talked all about the convention center, but we did spend a day or two over in the C space talking to CMOs from some of the biggest companies in the world. And one of the things to me that was really interesting is the focus on esports. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't know what I would have done if when I was in college, they were paying $50,000 for people to be on an esports gaming team. That would have been just too much for me. I think I would have played a lot of StarCraft and with my $50,000 salary.
I would have played a lot of Zelda if that were any sport.
I don't even think that was
I don't think so.
no,
Unfortunately.
no, that wasn't ladder ranked or anything.
Yeah.
You know what? It was amazing to me that Coca-Cola is even trying to figure out how do we get into esports.
Coca-Cola has the luxury, first of all, obviously they're huge and they have a massive marketing budget, but they have a luxury of such a rich value brand. Now, I don't mean value like bargain basement discount prices. I mean value that Coke is an amazing brand, not because it's a sugary, delicious beverage that rots your teeth and makes you gain weight. Side note.
Hey, they might sponsor us here at some point. It's fine.
I tell
in
it
moderation.
like it is.
It's fine in moderation.
Sure. Coke is an amazing brand because of what it means. It brings people together. It excites people. It's fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the values that Coke has aligns with the values of the consumer. And basically what was said in that session is that they care about what their consumers care about. Consumers care about esports. Okay, so that's very basic. We get that. And it's not about the direct play, meaning, oh, I see a Coke banner on the side of the soccer field in esports, or I have an image of a gamer holding a Coke. They're there because they're creating community around esports.
So on that note, I found it really interesting to hear Blizzard Activision talk about, look, we don't really care if it's our game or not. We just want esports to be mainstream and all of that. That smacks of Microsoft 1996, right? When they were basically saying, you know, Steve Ballmer was screaming up and down the aisles saying, developers, developers, developers. You know, that really says to me they are building a platform, right? And that they want other people on the platform to make more money than they do, but they want to just be part of the ubiquitous platform.
They're building a platform, and more fundamentally, they're building a culture. And that is going to make all the difference. I mean, I
didn't really think about it that way.
They're the leaders. So if you can build the culture and create the groundswell, they do things right, they'll continue to be the leaders. And their challenge is to make esports legit. Now, it's legit, meaning the viewers are there, the money is there. But do we have the same respect and admiration? Do kids have the same aspiration looking at an esports player as they do for an NFL player? No. That's the cultural shift. So if they can get there, this is groundbreaking.
So what about companies like, you know, Cadillac, for instance, was in a similar conversation and it came up and they said, yeah, esports, that's trending and all CMOs are talking about it and figuring out how they get into it. You know, are we expecting to see you know, a new Cadillac CTS-V in the next you know, Need for Speed esports, you know, competition? I don't really know how that takes form, right?
I'm not sure either. We need to figure out how cool Cadillac wants to be, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, Cadillac healthcare plan, Cadillac not your daddy's Cadillac, you know. There's they definitely have some iconic status. It's going to be interesting to see if they can span it into different arenas like that.
And that will speak to the culture shift. When we see that happening and it's working and it doesn't feel weird, that's when the culture shift happened.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the CMOs from National Geographic and Bloomberg and, oh boy, Pandora, one of the things that they all pretty similarly said was that the new revolution is really all about catering to the consumer and making sure that the experience is very customizable and personalizable. Talk to us about that. It seems like there's a big shift going on, and people are trying to run and catch up.
Yeah, we've been talking about personalizing messages for quite a few years, and yet we still have this problem of, when I shop for, I was shopping for a yoga vacation, and I'm spammed with remarketing ads. So we're struggling on that front. Enter AI in the marketing space, this ludicrous idea of AI used in marketing and advertising.
Do they have PhDs over there? Because
I don't know. Might be light on the PhDs. Maybe that's why it's not working. No, just kidding. No, it's
piled high and deep.
So message personalization can work. I mean, no doubt about it. We have the technology to do it. It's just the case of we need to protect individuals' information. And when we need to anonymize customer information in order to target them with an ad, they're put in a group. And when they're put in a group, aka an audience, that personalization element starts to lessen. You can still do a lot with it, no doubt about it. But that's the balance we need to strike. We can do a lot of really advanced, amazing things. The point is, a lot of it really shouldn't happen, and with increasing data regulation can't happen because of having to protect that information.
That's an interesting concept, and that protecting the data, right, is really key. I just felt like it was a real shift because even I think it was Disney. They were talking about how do we personalize this and make an experience that is all customizable. I mean, I think some of these companies are racing and rushing and running headlong to try to change their business. And, I don't think Disney has a problem because they're pretty iconic, but there's some of these other companies that I don't know if they're going to make the ferry, so to speak, to Cool Kid Island.
Something that I talk about pretty frequently whenever I talk marketing is this balance between curation and discovery. And think about going to the far end of that spectrum and having everything curated, everything personalized.
So meaning like Facebook newsfeed?
Yeah.
That's quickly becoming, hey, don't worry, we have your best interests in mind, right?
Don't worry, I'll show you the news that you want to see, that you should see. Think about how scary that is. If my experience is controlled by AI in the way that, these brands, news media companies, whomever, is trying to customize this through any data point that I give them, and they're doing their best job to try to anticipate what I'm interested in, what I'm going to engage with, and serve me up that information. Well, has my ability to discover, has my ability to explore and learn new things severely impaired because they're trying to help me out?
I mean, hey, the handmaids are, trying to help things out and such. I think it's, there's definitely some parallels, but not to go down a rabbit hole.
Well, and that's more of a comment of what I just said early on the consumer experience. When you think about it as a brand marketer, there is also a danger in overly curating because your models are going to be imperfect. And people, guess what? They're actually unpredictable. They're humans with free will and they have new ideas, and people love discovering new things. So don't overly curate. We have this ideal, but maybe it's actually not an ideal. Let's help people discover. And I'm not saying go waste media dollars and spam people and don't be intelligent about how you target. Absolutely not. But there's balance.
Well, and take marketing away from it for a second, right? That marketing is such a small piece of what we as consumers do. There are times we just want to go find something, and not be marketed to death as well, right? There's times I've Googled something, and looked up something in Google News. It doesn't mean that I wanted to have a buying relationship. It just means that I maybe wanted to learn about it because I didn't see it somewhere else. And that's sort of where that curation piece comes in, right? I want to throw an interesting stat out there that I saw, that 70% of people believe in the next year that they're going to start using remote devices and voice somewhere in their lives. We also saw some low statistics on how much people are using voice to, maybe test out ordering, but it doesn't sound like at this point people are having a great experience, because 91% of all people are not reordering. What's that all about? I mean, people seem to be going into the year of voice here, and I'm not seeing the numbers that.
And what we really need to sort out is it the year of voice because Google really wants it to be the year of voice? Is it the year of voice because we're building it into everything? Or is it the year of voice because it's actually becoming advanced enough to be useful and that it's changing consumer behavior? So those are two really different things. And I think a lot of times, especially at CES, of course, that's where we see and hear the aspirational rather than the real.
So I didn't see anything with either Alexa or Google for an app or a skill that is any different than what I've seen on the phone platforms. It seems like there's a lot of people playing trivia games. It seems like there are a lot of people playing games, but I'm not seeing, and I didn't see any apps that are specific to either of those platforms and the voice thing, right? I haven't seen the killer voice app yet. And I guess I won't see it. I'll hear it and speak to it. But, what's that all about?
What Google did with their display at CES, so they had this little cart ride essentially through a scene that looked like It's a Small World and had all the different uses of what Hey Google can do for you. And it was all about, hey Google, give me directions to X. Hey Google, call this person. Hey, start this in my house. So it was all very basic activities that it was just helping to make it a little more seamless, a little bit more convenient. If people can actually do that, then voice will start to make its way into our habits. That's going to be the first step.
Well, it's like Siri not being accurate, and you say, "Hey Siri, do this thing for me," or "look this thing up," and then she says, "I think you said you'd like to go over the Golden Gate Bridge," and that's not even close to what I said, Siri.
Well, and even when Siri works, I still have to look at my phone and scroll through all the results. So, big deal. It saved me like a moment of typing. I'm still looking at my device.
Well, and what I would say, right, is if you think about the two different mediums, this is going to be the big challenge moving forward with audio. Think about it. We don't have many times where you're not going to go through too many choices, right? If you say, "Hey, buy dog food," and it doesn't have any preference, it's not going to go through a list of 10 different results. Like in a web page, you could quickly look and see, you're going to get maybe one or two choices before you decide that it sounds like calling your bank and talking to the IVR.
Well, and this ushers a whole nother question with how web assets are built. And if we want to have, let's just say everything on the internet be able to be understood and surfaced by voice, that information has to be structured in a certain way for our technology that we have today to be able to understand it and use it.
Well, and to that point, right? Even this podcast, this is our first one. I had to do a bunch of research to see, how do I get this ranked? Well, what did I have to do? I had to create I've got to create notes now, and I have to create a blog. I need to do all of these things in text so that my voice can be found, and the topics that we talk about in this can be found. And, I think on that note, right, that's sort of our challenge for 2019 and beyond. If voice is going to go from being, hey Google all over CES to really useful in our households, I think that's one of those things that we're really going to have to, solve as technologists.
And
right?
it's probably going to be a case of you meet in the middle, right? The technology we're using needs to improve so it understands content in a better way, but we also have to think about how we're building our assets. So it's trying to build for the future as much as possible, so it's understandable in voice.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I 100% agree with you. So in closing, are you looking forward? Our next major show is gonna be what? We're going to South by Southwest.
Yes.
Okay. And we're going to spend a lot of time at the Startup Village and, listening to a lot of talks and
pitch competitions. My favorite professional sport. Woohoo.
Yeah, nice. I mean, that would be, if we could get paid $50,000 a session to sit through pitches, that would be fantastic. So if you're a VC out there and need some folks to go and just sit and speed date all day long, we're in it to win it.
Maybe we should be bookies for that.
Yeah, kind of get the VIG, the over-under, like how long are they going to last? Are they going to make it to the next round? Yeah, we should talk to somebody in Vegas about that. That'd be a new sports line right there. So we're getting a little bit long. We're coming up to about an hour here. I'd like to, first of all, thank you, Malinda. You're going to be on the show an awful lot. We're also going to have a number of other callers in, and guests over time. My ask of you guys, hit the links, datamyths.com. That's our website. Datamyths on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Hit us up. Let's get this out there. If you want to hear more of this, we rely on you guys to follow us, share us, and all of that. I'd like to thank Infonomic Data for sponsoring this and letting us buy all this great gear to hopefully make a professional podcast. But we're going to refine this over time. And if you have topics that you'd love for us to discuss, if you have a startup you want us to check out and talk about, or technology, we're happy to do it. But thank you very much, Malinda, and let's go get after it.
Happy first podcast.
All right. Thank you.